So I think without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tara Houska. So Tara's Coaching First Nation, a tribal attorney based in Washington, D.C., the National Campaign Director, Honor of the Earth, and a former advisory of Native American Affairs on the Bernie Sanders campaign. I was a monstrous Bernie supporter, by the way. I've been wanting to meet somebody in the Bernie campaign for forever, so here we go. I finally got to do it. She advocates on behalf of tribal nations and local federal levels, arranging issues impact indigenous communities. Tara recently spent 6 months living and working in the North Dakota fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline. Thank you very much for that. She's a co-founder of the National Youth Mascots Nonprofit Committee Education for the Public about the harms of stereotyping and promoting positive representation of the Native American and public sphere. What a fantastic woman. Without further ado, let's give a warm and Energy Fair MREA welcome to Tara Houska. Thank you.
Bonjour, Tara Indijnaka Jaganashimang Minawa Jabawe, Kwe Indijnaka Zanishnabebang, Makwen Dute, Gojing and Dunjaba, Skigabizigizis Oapini Bishka. My name is Tara. I'm Bear Clan from Couchiching First Nation. I was born under the maple sapping moon. I think it's very important to always acknowledge the indigenous people of the lands we're on. So we're sitting in Dakota lands right now. There's Anishinaabe lands all around in Minnesota, and that's the language that you just heard. So, I am born and raised in International Falls, Minnesota, and it is very nice to be back in Minnesota. I've been out in Washington, D.C. for the past 4 years and learning all of the lovely policies and procedures of this country and seeing the ascension of Donald Trump into the highest office. I wanted Bernie to win, so I'm on the exact opposite end of that spectrum. We had 2 choices to make, and unfortunately, we did the one that has forced away apathy. I think we can give him that, right? I think Donald Trump has been the killer of apathy. So, I've kind of had I've actually only graduated 4 years ago, which is crazy to think about, and been out in the world. I was a 2-time graduate of University of Minnesota, went there for undergrad and law school. Go Gophers. And I've had this weird path of going from a DC law firm and representing tribal nations around the country to then working with Bernie, and then somehow ending up in North Dakota holding a car mat up to keep rubber bullets from hitting my body. It's been a weird transition over the past few years, to say the least. This last year especially was quite busy. But people ask, why this? Why the environment? Why are you all so concerned about this? Why are you willing to get bit by dogs and shot at in North Dakota and put in dog kennels and hit with water cannons and just all of the madness that happens? Who's familiar with Dakota Access Fight? Yeah. Minnesota had an amazing presence in North Dakota, by the way. I'm very proud of our. So people ask, why? Why this? I grew up on Rainy Lake. I grew up with a place that's pristine and beautiful, and I grew up hunting and fishing, and in later years, wild ricing and being close to the environment and close to the environment around us. To me, it was never an issue of being in a city and not knowing where my water comes from, not knowing where my food comes from. Instead, it's right there. If the pipeline or the mine is right near water, it's something that it's going to be transmitted to the fish that you're going to eat. Even the knowledge of the boats that we use that are out in the water, seeing that oily trail behind, I always knew, that we have an impact on the environment around us. And as I went through school at the University of Minnesota, they have this great program. It's the Ojibwe language program, and there's a cultural aspect to it as well. Medewin is the Ojibwe Medicine Society, and that has fundamentally changed my relationship with the earth around me, and taught me so much about how big of an influence we have, both in our role in this circle of life that we're all part of, but also in the role of the next generation. So everything that we do, everything that we, impact and reach out to in this world affects the next generation. The decisions that we make today affect the kids that are coming tomorrow. And that just, it resonated so much with me, and resonated with it has resonated with a lot of people that I'm a day with, but also with all of these people now that I see in environmental organizations that are looking at Indigenous people and saying, well, you guys seem like you've maybe been doing this for a while. You've been living sustainably for a while. It seems like you guys maybe have some ideas. I'm like, we do have ideas. We have quite a few ideas on how to keep this environment well. We understand that we're stewards, that we're not just takers, and we're not just consumers, that we have to give back, right? We have to give back. And so, coming from that background and then going out to Washington, D.C., and working on Capitol Hill and learning exactly how these processes really go, when it comes to federal legislation, when it comes to our lawmakers and our representatives, was pretty shocking to me. I kind of had this rosy version of, knowing that the government was something that my parents got pissed off about occasionally, and there was, bad things on the news, and it was whoever was in office at that time, right? But then actually going out there and seeing that it was a lot of pettiness and a lot of people that were influenced directly by corporations and then voting and putting in pieces of legislation that represent those corporations. I actually really would love to see a Congress where our representatives have to wear kind of like the bumper stickers, like when you're like a race car driver and you have to show who's sponsoring you. I mean, look at that and then look at how they vote. You see these special interest groups that are there, and for me as a tribal attorney, I was a lobbyist on the Hill, but I was lobbying for tribes. So I was asking for hospitals and schools and funding for teen suicide programs, and then sitting in the same room as big oil or the tobacco industry and just being like, I've got 5 minutes. I bet you guys have an hour, right? Okay, but those are the priorities. And that eventually led into meeting Bernie Sanders, introducing the Keep It in the Ground Act on the Hill. I was working in Capitol Hill and doing all this work for tribes across the nation when it came to helping out with their legal situation, but then spending my lunch breaks running over and doing Keystone protests and things like that, and seeing this, this complete lack of representation of both Indigenous voices, but also of a true perspective of what was happening out in the country. It felt like our voices were so minimal in the whole conversation. That the people themselves were very, very minor in the actual representation of what was being decided, of the pieces of legislation that were actually going through. And recognizing that, it wasn't until the very, very end of the session that they were actually going to do anything, and they were just going to pass through as many bills as they possibly could. And maybe they're actually pretty bad for a lot of people, but we just have to pass it, right? And then meeting Bernie, who was, I think at that point he was like crazy Uncle Bernie in the news. So I didn't really know a lot about Bernie Sanders when I went to that conference. I was just like, oh, cool, this guy's introducing a Keep It in the Ground Act. He wants to keep fossil fuels in the ground and not let public lands be drilled, which is where we're at right now, right? They're opening up the national parks, or trying to. They're trying to delist national parks and create those as, hey, let's see if there's any oil in, Yellowstone. It's like, how could you possibly do that? Where is the American people represented in that situation? You're putting our most precious places that we've kept pristine on the line for fossil fuel infrastructure. So I met this guy, this crazy guy. And he really, he's really very stern and all of that, and he's oh yeah, it's really nice to meet you. That guy. But ended up being looped into the campaign because at the same time, his presidential ideas and his promises were really actually catching on. People thought that somehow it wouldn't resonate with the American public to have a president that was talking about taking money out of Congress, taking influence and corporations out of Congress, creating a system where people's voices were actually being heard and the environment mattered. That was something that apparently made him crazy, but so many people, that message resounded with so many people around the nation. I mean, millions and millions of people voted for Bernie Sanders. That was incredible. And it was really powerful too, because his campaign was so different than something else that had happened before in terms of being grassroots. It was grassroots organizing around the country that got Bernie Sanders into where the position he was in, where he was actually at these debates with Hillary Clinton, pointing out the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party, pointing out that really there weren't that many differences between Democrats and Republicans when it came to certain issues. You know, fracking as a bridge fuel, natural gas as a bridge fuel, you're talking about hydraulic fracturing and contaminating the environment and using that as, yeah, that's our solution, that's our energy solution. No, that's not our energy solution. Just transition is our energy solution. Solar is our energy solution. Wind is our energy solution. You know, and so seeing, like, I mean, I would go out in these different states and go out and get to stump for Bernie, and it was pretty cool. There were some interesting people that came to Bernie Sanders rallies that had all this, you know, like a wealth of knowledge for sure. But it was, you know, really inspiring to see the power of people organizing. It was people that were doing this and making this change. It was not a campaign machine of, you know, money and lobbying ads and smear ads and all that stuff. Instead, it was just people, like a group of 20 people. I went to the state of Maine. It was literally 20 people that were able to get that state 80% of the vote for Bernie Sanders. I mean, that's incredible, right? It's incredible to see that power. Unfortunately, you know, at the end of the day, I think personally, you know, the system won, and that was hard. But I don't really think the system won entirely, because as this crazy Uncle Bernie grassroots effort around the country showed, there was a lot of people who weren't happy with the system. They weren't happy with status quo. They weren't happy with the way things were, and were willing to go out and organize and take a stand and do more than just march in the streets. They weren't just marching in the streets, they were knocking on doors, they were calling people, they were doing outreach, they were having meetings in their, you know, in their communities, and recognizing that their community voices really mattered. That it wasn't just about one presidential candidate, instead it was about who's in your state office, who's in your school board, who's in your city council, who is actually controlling the things that impact your daily life. It's not just one person. And that's where, you know, I look at someone like Donald Trump, and it is really hurtful to me, honestly, to see that person in office and to see some of the hurtful, hateful things that come out of his mouth and out of his administration. However, that is just one person. One person can't break us, just like one person can't make us. It's on us to keep us moving forward. And you know, after that loss, it was tough. You know, it was a tough loss, but it was also, like I said, inspiring to see those people kind of really realizing their own autonomy and really having their own agency. And then at that same time, like right when that campaign was done, and he had to, you know, support Hillary Clinton, and they tried to unify the party, even though they had already so clearly shown that there was a different progressive that was wanting something different than the standard candidate. At that same time, this pipeline struggle in North Dakota was happening, and it was really ramping up. It had been going on for a couple years. Just like here in the state of Minnesota, people have been fighting Line 3 for years. But unfortunately in North Dakota, even though the tribes had said no, 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 again and again, they were building it anyway. And the tribe, LaDonna Allard, she's a tribal member, she went on Facebook. Facebook is an amazing tool, by the way. It allows us to have connections to each other across the world. It's amazing and incredible. She went on Facebook and just asked for help. And then at the same time that she went out and asked for help, these runners ran 2,000 miles from Cannonball, North Dakota to Washington, D.C. 2,000 miles. Teenagers that cared, teenagers that was, this is our community, and we said no. This is literally our future on the line. If that pipeline breaks, and pipelines always leak, that happens. There's hundreds and hundreds of leaks every year in pipelines when it comes to pipelines, and it's not just a little bit. It's not just one rail car. It is thousands and thousands of gallons in a single minute. If that pipeline breaks, it will go into our drinking water, and it is the sole drinking water source of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and the many, many people living along the Missouri River. 17 million people live along that river. And to me, these kids showed up, this call went out, and it was, I have to go. I have to go and help, and I have to stand with finally seeing a resistance of no, we're not going to let this happen. We will not let you do this. We are taking a stand, and we're going to put our bodies in front of the machines. We're not going to let you do this to our lands. We're not going to let you destroy our sacred sites. And so it turned into this resistance that started from a group of about 12 people back in April to 10,000 people in late October. I mean, it was a point, like I got out there in August, and it was a couple teepees and a few tents and people being really excited and feeling awesome. And that turned into a community, like a whole city. It was the 14th largest city in North Dakota, which is pretty cool. 14th largest city in North Dakota. I mean, North Dakota is pretty sparse, but that was cool. That was super cool. You know, we joke around about, you know, getting our own zip code and all that stuff because they were trying to figure out, well, where do we mail all their arrest forms to? I'm not really sure. Like, we have warrants out for them, but they're living off, I don't really know, they're living off the grid. Also, all the stuff that you guys are working on, that made such a big difference when you are living outdoors. When you are doing active resistance, having solar arrays, having wind energy, having your own energy production is incredibly important to keeping those camps going. And there are camps up north right now that are gearing up for line 3 because they know that that pipeline may be a real thing. It may actually happen. It's sitting in the regulatory process right now. You know, Governor Dayton has been remarkably quiet about it, even as he's been holding these water summits around the state, has said really nothing about line 3, about taking a position against it. And, you know, they've started constructing now in Wisconsin, and they've started constructing in Canada, so they're essentially constructing around the state of Minnesota. To them, it's a done deal, right? In their minds, this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna bully this through. Minnesota doesn't matter. You guys are gonna approve this. I actually was on a NPR interview with one of the Enbridge reps, and she got asked, well, you know, what would happen if this pipeline isn't approved? What would Enbridge's position be then? And she actually laughed and said, you know, I don't know. I'm really not comfortable answering that question. I really don't know. And I'm like, you have never thought about that. That is clearly not even something that's passed through your mind at all. You know, this is done in your heads. So I wanted to show a video of the Dakota Access fight. I think I can talk about it and I can say all the things that I personally experienced, but I think it's more important just to see it. There's really no other way to get a sense of really what happened. And this is from Unicorn Riot. Anyone? Unicorn Riot? Yeah? All right. Unicorn Riot camped with us for months. It was awesome. Like, so, you know, I'd get to see these guys shuffling around their like robes in the morning and then like, you know, their little coffee and then show up and do this.
People are really clearly saying they're not going to get out of the way. It looks like the police are firing the LRAD now. It looks like the roadblock up here is going up in flames. The LRAD's now going off. People are backing up. There's 2 LRADs from my understanding. You can hear 2 of them going. That's really loud and really uncomfortable. People are still in the front waving flags. They're firing the LRAD again. Humvees with snipers in the turrets up there as well. And they're telling everyone to move south.
He will only listen to us and understand our struggles for the water, for the benefit of everybody. We wouldn't be in this spot. That's all we're here, is to protect the water and the sacred integrity of this land and our relationship to each other.
There's lines of police officers. They're there because the water protectors moved on when they saw construction happening right down there. You can see the excavators. They're bringing in railroad ties. And it looks like they're making an arrest. It's the first arrest that happened today. And people are really, you can see the construction happening as the police are moving in. So the police are actively trying to clear this camp out.
Even if we arrest somebody,
so they
we will
pulled somebody
not
in,
them,
they arrested them.
You need to go to the south.
So people have formed this new blockade. Helicopters showed up flying up overhead.
We need you to back away from the bear cat. We need you to move south. Along the roadway.
There it is.
But you need to go back.
They've made a few arrests. They've used pepper spray on some people. They're continually moving towards the new winter camp that's in direct line of the easement.
Cut that. Get the foul. Away from there.
Stop a little bit. I need you to go down.
Press.
You stay back! Guys, Taser!
They're making more and more lines. There's a big circle of people praying behind us, a bunch of people on the road. And here they've been holding this ground. They don't want them to come into this camp. You can see all these teepees, and the police already made it clear they're planning to take them all down once they get here. They're holding a multi-round grenade launcher. But now they have left patrol rounds aimed at people. There are big OC canisters as well. You can see the police officers have now made a kind of corridor all the way around it and are slowly trying to push everyone out of this camp. That's the pipeline route right there. That's where the Dakota Access Pipeline is supposed to come through, directly through this ground to that camp that was set up.
We're here to protect the sacred water and sacred Mother Earth, and I just don't want to have to tell my kids when they ask me what does clean water taste like.
Part of the International Indigenous Youth Council. I stand in solidarity with you, me and my people.
Stay away from the officers. Do not get out of the pickup. Stay at the pickup. On the roadway. Move south.
Move
back, you guys. Move back. Hey!
Hold on your arms.
Do not throw objects from the crowd. Move to the south. Move to the south.
Pepper sprays being unleashed. More pepper sprays. Tons of pepper spray in the air now. The wind is sort of on. Let's get back. Yeah, they're unleashing tons of pepper spray out of less lethal ammunition fired into the crowd, which can be lethal at point blank range, and it was point blank range. This took down somebody. They're stepping on them. So right now, people with medicine staffs are trying to hold their line. They're holding it in prayer.
Move to the south. Go back to the south camp. Back to the south camp.
Behind
Stop throwing! Stop throwing shit!
Move to the south.
This is the water protectors trying to defend Missouri, and you can see what they're facing today.
I just fell in the barricade.
On this particular day, it was a surreal situation as a Indigenous person, but also just as a citizen, to be in a situation where you are demonstrating and, you know, exercising your constitutional rights to freely assemble and have free speech, you know, exercise free speech, and being brutally assaulted by the police officers. I mean, I saw teenage girls getting maced at point blank range. Mace can kill you if you're hit that closely, and I mean, we're talking like right here. I almost got shot that day. There was a guy that saw me. I had been questioning the police officers who were all lined up and looking at us with their guns and like behind their masks. I asked them, you know, I signed up, I'm a lawyer, right? I swore an oath to uphold the laws of this country and to, you know, ensure that the laws of this country protect the citizens. What are you doing? Are you protecting citizens right now? Are you protecting a pipeline? And I could see like their heads start to get like really shamed, right? Like they were very ashamed of what they were doing. And one guy saw that and he like immediately took aim like right at my face and pulled the trigger, right? And someone saw that right as he did that and pulled me back and it exploded like right next to my head. I mean, if that had hit me in the face, I would have been very, very seriously injured. It was a situation where I was seeing in real time the interest of profits and the protection of profits over the protection of human beings. The human beings who were trying to protect the drinking water and their drinking water and the land for everyone, including the sons and daughters of the police officers, and including the sons and daughters of Energy Transfer Partners and of Dakota Access Pipeline and all the people that are involved in that, were being outright assaulted for taking a stand and for trying to stop the destruction of a sacred site that was, I mean, it was where that exit sign is right now. It was that close, watching and knowing that a sacred site was being destroyed. And that's not just a sacred site to indigenous people, it's a sacred site for everyone, right? This is our shared collective history. These places are shared, and once they're gone, they're gone. There's no coming back after that. You know, I think I definitely learned a lot about corruption out in DC, but then I saw a lot of corruption in real time when I was fighting on a front line. And that's something I'm really, really hoping does not happen in the state of Minnesota. Because if this pipeline project, Line 3, is sent through the treaty territories and wild rights and the headwaters of the Mississippi River and to the shores of Lake Superior, there's going to be incredible, incredible resistance. There already is incredible, incredible resistance. I mean, there's multiple camps of people right now that are standing there, that are making a stand. So if any of you want to take your skill sets of building amazing things up north, there's people that could definitely use your help because it's starting to get cold. But you know, you come to this point of, okay, so obviously there's a lot of problems, and I'm one of the people that fights against the problem, right? So I'm trying to fight against the expansion of fossil fuels. I'm trying to fight to protect the environment for future generations. But there has to be solutions too. And that's where renewable energy comes in. It's almost like beating your head against a brick wall, right? Like you're having these conversations with big oil and you're having these conversations with banks and with investors and all these different people. And you're going over the nitty-gritty of, you know, building a pipeline, and they're looking at you, well, no, we want energy. We want energy. I'm like, we have energy solutions that don't contaminate rivers. We have energy solutions that don't kill rivers when they spill into them. I mean, look at the Kalamazoo River. That was over 1 million gallons of tar sands that spilled into that river by the Enbridge Corporation. 1 million gallons. That river is still being cleaned up. And that's what they want to send through the headwaters of the Mississippi River. You know, that's what we're looking at, and it's a situation where, okay, Energy East just got suspended, potentially forever. That's amazing, incredible. That's a win over Canada. The Kinder Morgan pipeline is receiving this incredible amount of pushback and resistance. They're building tiny homes in the path of the pipeline. That's incredible. And now we've got like what's left, which is Keystone and Line 3, you know, and Line 3 is Enbridge's single largest project in history. It's the single largest project in the history of their company, and that's what they are putting all their eggs into. So imagine if we are able to defeat this pipeline and defeat this project. Imagine if they have to turn tail and go home. You know, this is Canadian oil. It's not their citizens that are going to bear the risk. It's ours. It's our citizens that have to worry about that pipeline breaking. and walking through your field and smelling oil and realizing tar sands are now laying on top of your field. I think it's an interesting situation to see indigenous communities who are some of the poorest in resources and some of the most invisibilized and not heard, that are out in front of this, that are the ones trying to lead the charge, that are the ones who are leading the charge. The Dakota Access Pipeline did get built, but along the way, we cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. And in the divestment efforts that we've been doing, which I will continue to do, what a lot of us are doing, we've cost them billions of dollars, billions. To the point that I've now had to see Kelsey Warren, the CEO of Energy Transfer Partners, painting himself as a victim, saying that the environmental groups and the Indians targeted him and they told a bunch of lies and it's really safe and they don't know. He actually alleged, they're suing us too, by the way. They're suing all these environmental organizations that tried to stop this pipeline in North Dakota because of the damage that was caused, right? And because of us now looking at, okay, so you guys don't care, obviously you have no souls, so we're gonna go to the banks because our money is the ones who's in the banks, right? Like we are consumers, this is like our money that you're actually out investing, so we should have a say in it. They listen to us. The banks really don't like us showing up. When we show up at Wells Fargo and we're rallying right in their front entryway, they're like, not happy to see us, right? Not happy to see us at all. And then if we show up with y'all and y'all are saying, hey, here's a great solution. Look at this. We could do this instead. That is both resistance and transition happening at the same time. The problem and the solution. I really hope that we come together and continue to resist together. So I wanted to, leave with one piece and then hear from you guys because talking is talking. But I think there is power in the earth, there's power in the water, and there's power in the sky, and there's power in each other. And so, run for office or run a protest or run to break the system apart. Whatever floats your boat, it's all good, right? Because we're all fighting for the next generation. We are all in this together, and together we are powerful, and it's people that make the difference. So, go on, miigwech. Up. On September 28th at the state capitol, you can march to stop the Line 3 pipeline. There is going to be a jingle dress ceremony, and they will be marching to the public hearing. There's a public hearing that's going to be here in St. Paul at the Intercontinental Hotel at 6 p.m. If you want to go and make your voice heard and yell at some regulatory boards about the things that they want to send through our lakes, this is the time to do it. September 28th.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, everybody. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we're going to take a few questions. Anybody have any immediate questions for Tara? Let's just hear. You could come over here, or actually go ahead and shout your question out. I'm just going to repeat the question. The question was basically, after we had Obama for 8 years, just kind of figure out the role where we are today.
And you're asking specifically with him being in office during the Dakota Access Pipeline resistance? Yeah, so that's...
Yes.
And before. Yeah, no, so my first internship in Washington, D.C. Was actually in the White House. It was in the Council on Environmental Quality. It was 2011, so Obama was in office. At that time, we were working on Keystone. Right? And Keystone was this resistance that happened for 7 years. People just arrest after arrest in this escalated situation, all these lawsuits, landowners filing lawsuits. I think there was a perception that Obama was because he was a liberal, he was a environmentally conscious president. And from my perspective, I don't think that's entirely true. I think that he made a point of putting people into environmental positions that were environmental focused. He certainly didn't put in the CEO of Exxon into, a high-level department, unlike some people. Also didn't set out to dismantle the EPA. I think that when it came to the environment, it seemed like that was one of the things that was maybe on the chopping block when it came to negotiations and stuff like that. It was really, really hard. From working in the White House on environmental issues to then being in the Dakota Access Pipeline fight and realizing that we were literally at the point of someone potentially being killed. Someone had lost their eyesight in one eye from being shot at, and we had a woman who almost lost her arm. Sophia Wolanski had her arm almost blown off by a concussion grenade. I had friends that were walking around with holes in their legs. I mean, skin grafts, like the whole thing, and Obama didn't say anything. Like, it was horrible, at first I thought, okay, maybe it's because Hillary Clinton is running and she's pro-fracking, so he's gonna stay out of it. But then she didn't win, and he still didn't say anything. And it got colder and it got worse, and it got so bad that it was to the point where I literally thought someone was gonna lose their life. And it terrified me thinking about that happening. And nothing, he said nothing. It wasn't until the veterans showed up, about 2,000 veterans showed up, and it was the veterans versus the police, and I don't think that he wanted to see that as his send-off, his last days in office. So I would say, I think that we had someone in office that was supportive of the environment, but at the same time, we definitely still had a politician in office, and it was not one of his top priorities.
Thanks, Tara. Anybody else? Yes, the gentleman standing up.
God bless you.
We all hope so, right?
That's actually, so the other part of what I do is this thing called Not Your Mascots, and it's about, one, the Washington football team, but also about just representations of Native American people generally. It's surprising to me that even in Washington, D.C., which is pretty intelligent people for the most part, I mean, maybe not now these days, but for the most part, right? But still getting those questions of, man, you're an attorney, really? You guys are attorneys now? And I'm just like, Indians are everything. Like, we're also doctors and lawyers and teachers, and like, we're all over the place. We're everywhere, right? We even live in houses these days. It's crazy. Like, 2017 happened, and, yeah. Or my teepee has Wi-Fi in it. I tell them things like that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yes, there are quite a few Indigenous attorneys. We always need more people. We always need more attorneys, but we also need people that are non-Indigenous too. I mean, it's everyone. This is, the water and the land is all of us. It's all of our future that's at stake.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Are Senator Klobuchar and Franken, are they allies, would you say, or maybe not so much?
So I would say, I did see that this gentleman right here, actually, Mr. Robert Pilot, questioned Senator Klobuchar directly about Line 3 and about Indigenous rights. And she did a pretty good sidestep, I thought. She talked about jobs, and she talked about not hearing really any pushback on this particular issue. So I think that's a crock, and I think we should maybe push back even more just to remind her that, yes, we actually do care a lot. Franken, I think he can be pushed a lot more, right? He's got a long history of having really strong support for Indigenous rights. He actually came out against Dakota Access Pipeline, was very much opposed to that. I'm actually working really hard with his office to try and get, there's gonna be a thing that's circulated. We're setting the date for it, but it's gonna be a Call Your Senator Day, and particularly Call Franken. If we can push him over to calling Governor Dayton, maybe we'll get actually a public stand against Line 3. Like, that would be incredible to have.
Excellent.
Follow up to the last question. I'm from Wisconsin, so did you get any help from any of the congressional delegation from Wisconsin? I know Ron Johnson's a absolute zero, and so is Paul Ryan, and we've got plenty of zeros in Wisconsin now, but hopefully we had somebody that helped out.
Yeah,
Is there anybody?
I don't know. I'm kind of wondering what's going on in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin's a really pretty state. It's really green, it's got beautiful hills, and it makes a lot of cheese, and it's got a lot of lakes too. And I'm like, how are these guys coming out of that state? Seriously? Paul Ryan? Like, come on. That guy's terrible. Like, sorry, but that guy's terrible. I really haven't done a lot of organizing with the congressional members in Wisconsin, but I'm assuming because I actually will be moving back to Duluth very shortly to fight Line 3 on the ground. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Coming to a jail near you. It's gonna, yeah, no. No, I probably will be learning a lot more about the Wisconsin, political structure and what they got going on over there. It's a tough state for sure. It's very red.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, thanks, PDE, Tara, for all you do. This is Robert Pilot. The one thing that I just want to mention too about Amy Klobuchar is that there's an old native saying, the left wing and the right wing are from the same bird. And that's what I got. She sounded very Republican when I talked to her.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else?
Hi. First of all, thank you for your speech. That was very inspirational. And
thank you.
My question is for us out here who want to learn more. Where's the best place to get educated and learn the facts about what you talked about today?
Sure. So there's actually a specific campaign page just for Line 3. It's called stopline3.org. I work for Honor the Earth. You can go to honorearth.org. And Honor the Earth, we support struggles all over the United States, and all, it's these issues that I'm talking about, specifically why are Indigenous people so tied to this? Because Indigenous communities are the ones that bear the brunt of this. When it comes to fossil fuel extraction and climate change, it's first and worst Indigenous communities, because it happens somewhere else. It doesn't happen in cities, it doesn't happen in suburbs, it doesn't happen where people can see it. It's somewhere else. And that's usually reservations, and it's public land. And that's where you see, whoever heard of Cannonball, North Dakota, But Cannonball, North Dakota became really well known because it was right next to the pipeline route. And now we're gonna be looking at, White Earth, Minnesota, these places, Fond du Lac, people don't know, these are small little places, right? But we know them, and these are our lakes, right, that are at stake. So I would recommend those two websites to at least learn a little bit more about this particular fight, but Honor Earth has a lot more about just generally, like what's going on out there. And I'm sure you guys have got some great resources about sustainability and renewables, our solutions at this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Are there some specific Line 3 events and actions coming up that you want to highlight?
September 28th, go to the public hearing. Please go to the public hearing. Seriously. The hearing will be at the Intercontinental Hotel in St. Paul at 6 p.m. There's also one at 1 o'clock. You got 2 chances to go and talk to the regulators and tell them why you're concerned about this going through their lakes and through your drinking water, through your watersheds. Please go to that. September 28th. Very important. Yeah, that'll be fun. You get all fired up, and then you can go tell them how you feel.
Excellent. Thank you. Who's next? This is another advisory board member, by the way.
Hi. This question is actually kind of for my son who wasn't able to be here. But would you have any thoughts after being in DC and kind of seeing this whole like representational, non-representational government occurring? We're kind of in a place where there's a lot of divisiveness being built up by the media and by, you know, almost everywhere you go, it's like us versus them. And it's just getting worse and worse. And the problem is, what do we do when half of the country is them? I mean, that's a lot of people, you know, and so just fighting and winning doesn't seem to be a viable answer, totally. So do you have any comments about how to open up conversations with people who don't share your views?
I work with people all the time that think that I'm insane, right? So people that do not agree with me whatsoever. But I think it's really important to meet people where they're at. You know, people come from whatever set of facts and maybe not always facts, but, you know, versions of facts, but also just a perspective, right? And the immediate situation around them. And so, you know, when you're talking with someone that is standing on the completely opposite side of the room from you and cannot agree on pretty much anything, I think it's important to just kind of open your mind a little bit more, even if their mind is really closed, and try to understand, you know, why did they feel this way? And maybe you won't come to an agreement, but I think there is a lot of division that's happening, and it's become very apparent, right? Like, I think that especially from the media, we see this categorization of people. So it's, you know, it's Black Lives Matter, it's Antifa, it's, you know, the KKK, well, those guys do stand on their crazies, but, you know, there's all these different just little silos, right? And we end up working in silos too. So there's the environmentalists working in one group, there's the indigenous peoples working in another, there's the African Americans working in another. You know, we all divide ourselves up. But I think what I see that's really effective is community organizing. So locally, not just looking at the national level, but looking locally. You know, having a rally like this, you know, is really powerful. You're going to have all these people coming out that are from all different walks of life, from different communities that are here for a united issue, right? I think if you can tolerate most people, you can have a conversation with them. If you can keep your mind open and your heart open and just try to see them as people, it can be really helpful. But sometimes, you know, you do have to walk away. I definitely have some, you know, conversations at the Thanksgiving table where I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, I'm gonna walk away from this one. Not gonna reach you, but that stuffing is great, right? Yeah.
Excellent. We have another one right over here. Anybody? Yes.
My name's Maggie Kozak, and I just had a response for the last one. I recently made a friend who was a Republican. I'm a big liberal. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was totally freaked out. And my friend has brought to my attention that I, as a liberal, can be really alienating. And I don't do a very good job of recruiting people to, quote unquote, my side. And those signs we have everywhere that say, like, everyone welcome, I'm like, does that include Republicans? Am I including Republicans? And it's just kind of opened my eyes to, like, you know, I should try to be nicer about it so that I can be more convincing. And this friend and I have continued for months, and he recently admitted to me that, like, I've actually helped change his mind because I've told him things that he didn't know about because he was listening to fake news. And so I think the more that we can try to be tolerant and the more that we can try to recognize that someone's a human and try not to attack them and have those conversations, even though they can be uncomfortable, and build up that trust, the more that we can get people to agree with us and go, you're right, this guy Trump, we should get him out of here. So thank you so much for your talk and for going to Dakota Pipeline when some of us are too chicken or make excuses and don't go. So thank you so much for all of your work.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let's go. Actually, let's take one right here.
Hello. I heard someone say tonight that half of the people are with us and half aren't. And actually, I think that is not quite accurate. I think many more people are with us than are not. I saw one polling about 56%, and I think it's probably low. And I wonder if you'd say something about, it seems like we need to just full on say what we want, say what we believe is the best thing, like you've been doing tonight, for the land, the water, the country, all the people, without rage.
Yeah. You know, actually, that makes me think. So you were fundamentally opposite sides, right, of the table. What's it like to have a conversation with someone like that? So when I was arrested and I was on the side of the road in zip ties, one of the police officers was horrible. He was, trying to say all this stuff like, you're never gonna get your car back, you're gonna be in jail for the next 6 weeks, all this stuff to all the people that were arrested. I'm like, none of that's true. And he's like, how would you know? And I go, because I'm a licensed attorney. And he walks away. He was really mad, right? But then this other guy came up who was like a local police officer, right? Because that was the thing. North Dakota, they had to bring in police officers from out of state because it was police officers that would have been in a situation of beating up their neighbors, right? Like that's a very uncomfortable situation. And also the knowledge that this is their kids drinking water too. And so the next guy that had the conversation with me was a local police officer. And he was, he came over and he was like, all right, I have a conversation with you, just talk. And I was like, in my handcuffs, I'm like, well, I have nothing else to do at this moment. But no, he was like, I don't understand. Why would someone like you, why would an attorney do this? Like, why are you here? Why would you get arrested like this? This is stupid. And I asked him, I was like, okay, well, why do you think that? And he's like, well, let me guess, you're from California and you're some liberal, right? And I was like, no, I'm from International Falls, Minnesota. And he goes, wow, I fish over there all the time. I go fishing over there. And so then we started talking about fishing, right? And then we started going in the conversation of, well, do you know what hydraulic fracturing is? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, those big oil derricks, they're pushing a bunch of chemicals into the ground. And like, have you noticed that the lakes up north maybe aren't as clean? And he's like, oh yeah, my son and I, we can't go fishing up there. The fish, you can't eat those. And I was like, okay, well, that's what these people are concerned about. They're concerned about contaminating these lakes. And then I could just see like the wheels like slowly turning, like, oh my goodness, maybe you guys are talking about water and maybe this actually would impact me and my son and our ability to fish. And so just reaching them as a human. And, at that point he was like, I could see he kind of maybe felt a little bit bad about me being arrested, but like he was nicer to me after that. But yeah, so that's a moment of meeting someone where they're at, for sure.
Thank you. We just got time for just a couple more. I will take you.
Hi, thanks so much for the work that you do and coming to speak with us. I'm wondering about the topic of like indigenous resistance to fossil fuel development. If there has been any like collaboration or communication with communities north of our border in Canada, since this is where, the tar sands are operating from.
Absolutely. And so I'm actually from a First Nation. So I'm from Couchiching First Nation, which is on the other side of Rainy Lake. I've actually got a bunch of family that's over here. Also from Couchiching. Yeah. Shout out to the Breers and the Houskas. So, that's really an important piece that I think can often get lost, of fighting all these different pipelines. We're fighting Dakota Access, we're fighting Line 3, we're fighting Keystone, we're fighting Energies, we're fighting Kinder Morgan. At the end of the day, it's about the source. So it comes from the Bakken and it comes from the tar sands in Alberta. And the tar sands in Alberta, those are tiny little communities that are so horribly impacted by this. We're talking, cancer rates that are out of control, people dying at the age of 30 from cancer, like tons and tons of people in these little places. So I've been personally trying to do a lot of collaboration as much as I can up north. I've been going up to Treaty 3 where I'm from. I've gone up there a couple times this summer and, working with organizers that are desperately trying to get resources and attention to stop it at the source. Always keeping that messaging in all of our work is really, really important, to stop it at the source, because there is a community up there and several communities up there, and they are desperately, desperately impacted by this, and it's really terrible. So yeah. There's definitely collaboration. We have to acknowledge it's a colonial border, right?
All right, cool. We have time for 2 more questions. Oh, I'm going to take you. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So that was one of the most beautiful parts of Standing Rock, right? There was this really, really difficult situation going on where you were going out and seeing incredible violence done on other human beings, and that was really hard. But the only reason that we were able to keep doing that was because we were in prayer. And there were hundreds of communities, hundreds of nations that came together and shared culture, prayer, food, knowledge, traditional knowledge together. That was like one of the best parts, is being in this community where so many different nations were around you and you could participate in ceremony that you wouldn't normally get a chance to experience. You could go hang out with the Dene people, you could go talk to Pueblo people, you could talk to, Six Nations Mohawk people. There were so many different nations that were together in that situation. That was what kept us going. That grounding is what keeps me going. Like I said, Ojibwe Medicine Society Medewin is what keeps all of the work I do grounded. It's something that flows through my relationship to the earth and to the water around me, because it's actually my cultural responsibility. Women are water keepers in Ojibwe culture. That is, we are keepers of the water and men are keepers of the fire. So it is actually my cultural responsibility to take care of the water. And when you have the knowledge of something like that women have this role and are fundamentally connected to the water of the earth, just like the water within our bodies and within our wombs, that it keeps you going. That part is beautiful and it keeps you going.
Excellent. So we got one more question. Sorry, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Tara, for all that you do. I just want to flip that whole last conversation around a little bit. And could you talk about the impact of being arrested? And some of us are chicken about being arrested, honestly. And so what's the professional impact of being arrested for something like this?
It's, yes. I could give you the Know Your Rights training. So we did a lot of those, which is you don't have to talk to police officers. You do have the right to remain silent. And, it's one of the things that I'm really hoping doesn't happen is a situation like North Dakota in Minnesota. I don't want to see human beings in dog kennels in Minnesota or, water cannons being used on human beings in below freezing temperatures. And that's not acceptable. It should have never happened, and it did. And it was interesting to me as I was talking to my family back home, because they saw little clips of it on the news, but it really wasn't a full story. It was Facebook that told them the truth. Like, my mom would see Facebook and she's like, that isn't what I saw on the news at all. I saw, it looked like you guys were being violent. I was like, no, that was not the situation at all. I think spiritually it's a difficult, it was not a fun situation for sure. It was very dehumanizing. It was a moment or a situation I definitely will never forget. Being kenneled with a bunch of other women, and we did have one positive moment. We made a silver lining out of it. So they actually put pictures of dogs up on the walls, and it was really bad, right? We were in these big kennels together. And so then we started barking like dogs. All of us did. We were all just howling at the top of our lungs, and the police officers, shut up. And we're like, you're treating us like dogs, so we're gonna act like dogs. I'm just saying, yeah, that's what we did. So professionally, I guess I hope that the Minnesota Bar Association doesn't get too pissed off at me. My case was delayed out to December actually of this year. So a whole year I have to wait for getting charged with trespass while getting into my car on a public road. So.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Let's give a big energy for us. Thank you to Tara Houska. Thank you very much.